She engaged in petty theft, then gradually targeted wealthy people. Harry stole using sophisticated methods, giving the stolen goods to a gang in exchange for illegal drugs. Just then, the police raided the gang's hideout. Tae-seop accidentally encountered Harry on the stairs. He immediately recognized her. But before Tae-seop could say anything, Harry accidentally dropped the package of illegal drugs. She panicked and ran away. She thought she had escaped, but Tae-seop unexpectedly appeared in front of her. But instead of taking Harry to the police station, he took her to his sister's hair salon. Even Tae-seop's sister was startled. She felt sorry for Harry's emaciated appearance. Tae-seop gave Harry food and confided that he had previously asked for a reduced sentence for her because he wanted to apologize to her on behalf of her terrible father who had killed her mother, and to this filthy world. He had told her to live a decent life after her release. But now, Harry was living like this. This greatly disappointed Tae-seop. He advised her not to ruin her future anymore. Harry scoffed at this. She believed that no one would welcome a murderer like her. Hey, Rai thought there was nothing shameful about surviving in a cruel world by living a dirty life. Tae-seop then mentioned Harry's dream of becoming an actress. Tae-seop's wife had once said that actors are people who have to deceive the audience and the world, and ultimately, they had to deceive themselves in order to survive. Tae-seop will give Harry a chance, as long as she wants to work with him. Harry didn't expect Tae-seop to make such a bold decision. And then, true to his promise, Tae-seop arranged for Harry to work as a stunt actress. This allowed Harry to pursue her dream while also helping Tae-seop keep an eye on his wife. In the days that followed, Harry carried out her mission of monitoring and eavesdropping on Sang-ah. At Sang-ah's most vulnerable and desperate moments, Harry saw her past self. It turned out that in the past, when Harry was at her most desperate, Sang-ah's image appeared everywhere. At that time, Sang-ah was like an angel looking down on the hell that Harry was living in. But now, that radiant image is gone. It turned out that the angel Sang-ah also had to live in hell like Harry. Sang-ah wondered who Harry was. Why did she appear at such a crucial moment? But before Sang-ah could hear the answer, Harry's phone displayed a message from Tae-seop. He asked if she had found his wife yet. At this moment, Sang-ah understood everything. She gave a mocking smile. To regain Sang-ah's trust, Harry threw her phone onto the street. Tae-seop was extremely worried because he couldn't reach Harry. It wasn't until Tae-seop saw the video circulating online that he realized Harry had betrayed him. Because of the heavy rain, the two women had to stay overnight. In a dilapidated hotel, Harry quietly poured wine for Sang-ah. Sang-ah said that if she had worked for Tae-seop, she must have known everything about Sang-ah's past. Moreover, Sang-ah said that the other party didn't need to feel guilty because she knew Tae-seop hadn't just sent Harry to keep an eye on her. Sang-ah asked Harry how Harry felt while following her. Harry's answer surprised Sang-ah. Harry said she felt worried because she always hoped Sang-ah would live well. On the day Harry's mother passed away, she saw Sang-ah on TV crying along with her. That touched Harry's heart. Sang-ah was a little confused by that confession, but when Sang-ah saw the scars on Harry's wrists, she understood that Harry wasn't lying. Harry admitted that she felt sorry for Sang-ah, and sometimes she found Tae-seop scary, because even though he wasn't secretly following Harry, he seemed to understand Harry better than she thought. Tae-seop went to the hotel lobby where the two women were staying, but he just stood there silently for a while before leaving. This action was like a warning. No matter what Harry did, Tae-seop could guess it. Harry returned to bed and pulled the blanket over Sang-ah. Then she lay down beside him, gazing at him. The touch of her hair woke Sang-ah. In her daze, Sang-ah mistook Harry for Jisoo. Heartbroken, Sang-ah apologized, then leaned in and gave Harry a kiss. Harry didn't shy away. The next day, an article unfavorable to Tae-seop appeared, expressing suspicion that he was covering up the case involving Wang Chae. Members of the Creative Party advised Tae-seop to lie low for a while until public opinion calmed down. But Tae-seop insisted he would handle everything himself. As the election was fast approaching, he couldn't miss this opportunity. Tae-seop called Dong-yuk for help, but Dong-yuk didn't want to get involved in trouble, so he handed the phone to his secretary. The secretary used the excuse that Dong-yuk was busy organizing his father's birthday party to refuse to meet Tae-seop. Only when Tae-seop threatened to come to the birthday party did Dong-yuk hastily answer the phone. Tae-seop threatened that if he were arrested, Chairman Kwon wouldn't have a peaceful life either, as Tae-seop held something that could overthrow Chairman Kwon at any time. The next day, Harry returned from buying breakfast, but Harry saw Sang-ah talking to someone, and then Sang-ah demanded to leave immediately. immediately. Before leaving, Sang-ah thanked Harry, wishing her to live the life she desired. If Harry ever wanted to pursue her dream of becoming an actress, Sang-ah hoped they would meet again in the same project. Jiho was still actively talking to reporters to badmouth Sang-ah. While he was exaggerating the story to the reporters, Director Lee called to inquire about the progress of the plan. Jiho said he would approach Chae-sang, and then he would release the Parsmith recording tomorrow. Director Lee was extremely excited upon hearing this, but before she could gloat, she became worried about her elderly husband's health. If things continued like this, Chairman Kwan's paperwork would never be finished. But Dong Yuk knew the intentions of Director Lee and her daughter. He sarcastically remarked that Director Lee was dragging her daughter into the inheritance dispute. Director Lee, not to be outdone, retorted that Dong-ok wasn't a filial son and only relied on Tae-seok. Dong-ok was furious at this. Dong-uk directly questioned whether Director Lee was responsible for leaking the Wang Chae case to the press. Dong-yu warned Director Lee not to expose the case further to harm Tae-seok. Because Director Lee was his second wife, she probably didn't know her husband's past. The Wang Chae case was a fatal weakness. It could bring down the entire powerful family immediately. Dong-uk revealed something to Director Lee. Tae-seok was the only one who knew the real killer of Wang Chae. However, Dong-uk didn't need Tae-seok to reveal the killer. He was almost certain it was his father. Director Lee was astonished. She realized she had made a wrong move. Meanwhile, Tae-seok had already given Chairman Kwan a birthday gift, documents about the real killer of Wang Chae. But Chairman Kwan didn't care. Chairman Kwan told Tae-seok to go ahead and release the documents. Believing Tae-seok couldn't do anything to him, Tae-seok confidently asserted that he would definitely expose the case. As he himself had no other choice, Tae-seok wasn't worried about Chairman Kwan, as he could use his old age and frailty as an excuse for bail. However, the honor of the Gaia Group and Jumi's future were at stake. Chairman Kwan asked what Tae-seok ultimately wanted. Tae-seok replied that the news about him and his wife was leaked by Director Lee, so Chairman Kwan should figure out how to handle it himself. He should have called Tae-seok when he had resolved the issue. At this point, Chairman Kwan couldn't bear it any longer and collapsed in his chair, involuntarily defecating. Director Lee, feigning concern, rushed to help her husband. She, feeling nauseous, endured the pain and washed a towel for him. Director Lee prevented her husband from going to the hospital, fearing that news of the Gaia Group chairman's impending death would leak out. This would be detrimental to their inheritance dispute. Director Lee suppressed her anger and went into the room to clean up after Chairman Kwan. She thought her husband would be grateful and leave the shares to Jumi. But before Chairman Kwan collapsed, he grabbed his wife by the head and warned her to stop everything. Director Lee had no choice but to call Jiho. She requested a temporary postponement of the livestream to release Sang-ah's recording. However, the situation was now beyond Jiho's control. Chae-sang was no longer cooperating. Chae-sang declared he would absolutely not let Sang-ah off the hook. As soon as Chae-sang finished speaking, he saw Sang-ah helping his mother clean up the scrap metal. Then, she knelt down and apologized for causing Chae-sang to go to jail. Seeing this, Chae-sang felt a little moved. Chae-sang suddenly appeared before Sang-ah. Meanwhile, Jiho had been kidnapped by Harry. Even after searching through Jiho's computer and phone, Harry couldn't find a copy of the recording. Jiho claimed Chae-sang was the one holding the recording. Knowing how stubborn this man was, Harry coldly doused him with gasoline and then used a lighter to force him to reveal Chae-sang's whereabouts. At this moment, Chae-sang and Sang-ah were talking at a cafe. Sang-ah begged Chae-sang for forgiveness, even shedding a few tears of guilt to evoke sympathy. Chae-sang softened slightly, but as soon as he heard Sang-ah mention destroying the recording, he realized her true intentions. Chae-sang angrily accused Sang-ah of only thinking of herself. Knowing she couldn't deceive him any longer, Sang-ah wiped away her tears and stopped pretending. Chae-sang lost control, grabbed Sang-ah by the neck, and pushed her against the wall. When passers-by heard the argument, they gathered around to film and take pictures. Seeing this, Chae-sang immediately ran outside to escape. Tae-seok had also seen the video of Chae-sang strangling Sang-ah online. Just then, Harry arrived to report on the investigation into Jiho. She said she was close to locating Chae-sang's hiding place. Tae-seok reminded her that she had been with Sang-ah the previous night. He warned that Harry's mission was only to monitor his wife, so she shouldn't go too far. Harry bluntly stated that her behavior was all Tae-seok's fault. She believed he was just using her. Just like Sang-ah, Harry offered to help Tae-sup killed Tae-sang. Seeing that Hae-ri was getting out of control, Tae-sup told her to stop. He told her not to linger around Tae-sup and Sang-ah anymore. After saying this, Tae-sup immediately left. Dong-uk called to thank Tae-sup. Now, Dong-uk no longer needed Tae-sup's help. Thanks to Tae-sup, Chairman Kwon was bedridden. Dong-uk said that before Chairman Kwon became incapacitated, he had amended his will. If an heir leaked unfavorable information about the Gaia Group, all their rights and shares would be completely revoked. This meant that Director Lee was in a disadvantageous position because she had provided information about the Wang Che case to the press. Dong-yu watched Director Lee making calls everywhere to deal with the consequences of her own actions. This made Dong-uk extremely satisfied. Tae-sup then used Chairman Kwon's reputation to persuade Dong-uk to continue supporting him, but Dong-uk didn't care. While talking, Dong-uk poured alcohol around the hospital bed. He said he only wanted to kill the father who had beaten him from childhood to adulthood. Because Tae-sup lost his supporters, all his hard work over the years has gone up in smoke. Tae-sup, enraged, smashed his phone to pieces. But that wasn't the worst of it. The very next day, a series of unfortunate events unfolded. Years ago, Tae-sup had falsified documents in Wang Che's case, a fact exposed in every newspaper. As a result, he was suspended by the Creative Party and barred from participating in the upcoming elections. A video of Chae-sang strangling Sang-ah was also circulating online. Sang-ah was facing enormous compensation claims from various brands. Chae-sang also held a live stream announcement stating that at 8:30 in the evening that night, he would reveal the truth about Wang Che's murder. This greatly impacted Sang-ah. This shocking news devastated Tae-sup and his wife. Tae-sup called to reassure Sang-ah that he would handle everything, but Sang-ah interrupted him. She said they were paying the price for their ambitions. Now, either they or Chae-sang had to die. Only then could the matter be resolved. Ji-ho hurriedly called Chae-sang. Ji-ho promised to give Chae-sang money to keep quiet, but Chae-sang didn't need that small amount of money. Chae-sang angrily smashed his phone and screamed in frustration. He couldn't understand why everyone took advantage of him and then abandoned him. At the same time, Hae-ri and her accomplices were locating Chae-sang. As Hae-ri was about to go to Chae-sang's location, she received a phone call from someone. Hae-ri immediately rushed to a hotel. When Hae-ri opened the door and went inside, she was shocked to see Sang-ah lying in the bathtub. Her wrist was covered in blood. Hae-ri panicked and rushed to stop the bleeding. Then Hae-ri called an ambulance to take Sang-ah to the hospital. Sang-ah also left a letter next to the bathtub for Hae-ri. The letter expressed Sang-ah's despair. She couldn't face the series of events that were happening. After reading the letter, Hae-ri quietly went somewhere. Meanwhile, Director Lee was extremely worried because Ji-ho still hadn't resolved the issue with Chae-sang's livestream. There were only about 4 minutes left until the livestream started. Everyone was waiting to watch the drama unfold. But when the livestream began, all they saw was a pitch-black screen. Looking closer, they were horrified to discover that Chae-sang had died live on stream. When Tae-sup heard about Sang-ah's death, he didn't rush to Chae-sang's side. Instead, he went straight to the hospital. Fortunately, Sang-ah received timely emergency treatment, so her life wasn't in danger. Tae-sup breathed a sigh of relief, but when he thought about Chae-sang's livestream, he couldn't help but worry. Just then, the television station reported Chae-sang's mysterious death. Tae-sup felt a sense of relief and a smile appeared on his face. He understood that Chae-sang was just a pawn that had lost its usefulness. Tae-sup stayed and waited outside his wife's emergency room. As Tae-sup looked at the room, memories from the past flooded back. He recalled his younger self. On the day his father had the accident, he had rushed to the hospital in a panic. At that time, Tae-sup only hoped his father wouldn't leave him behind. Returning to the present, Tae-sup's older sister appeared. She inquired about her sister-in-law's condition. She felt immense pity for her unfortunate brother. Tae-sup's sister could only weep for her brother, but she couldn't do anything more. She gave Tae-sup some food, told him to take care of himself, and then left. Meanwhile, Director Lee was also extremely troubled by her husband. If he didn't wake up soon, she would never be able to get her hands on all the shares. As Director Lee looked at the useless doctors, she gradually lost all patience. Before leaving the hospital, she sarcastically praised Sang-ah's acting skills. The truth was exactly as Director Lee suspected. Sang-ah had deliberately faked and ended her own life to attract public attention. Because this was the only way for Sang-ah to avoid being ruined by public opinion, Tae-sup coldly entered the room. First, he expressed his concern for his wife. Immediately afterward, he angrily overturned the dining table. Tae-sup asked why Sang-ah hadn't discussed this dangerous charade with him beforehand. He had been terrified upon hearing that his wife had been hospitalized. Sang-ah admitted she was also frightened, but it was the only way for her to survive the media storm. The couple couple, calmed down and apologized to each other, explaining they were only trying their best to avoid dragging each other down into the abyss. They then embraced each other for comfort and reconciled. The next morning, Tae-seop caught Director Lee secretly moving her husband to another location. Tae-seop immediately returned to discuss the situation with Sang-ah. They needed to reverse the current situation so that Tae-seop could continue participating in the election. The very next day, Tae-seop and his wife held a press conference. Sang-ah played the role of a frail wife, hurt by public opinion. She said that director Wang Chae had always been someone she respected, and she was willing to risk her honor to prove her innocence. Director Lee saw Sang-ah's professional acting and was furious at home. Tae-seop gently helped his wife aside, then confidently swore publicly that he had never hidden the truth and that the entire drama had seriously violated his personal honor. Director Lee, seeing the public opinion shifting, felt extremely angry. Just then, Dong Yuke entered with a ferocious dog. Director Lee, who normally never feared anyone, was now frightened by a dog. Dong Yu taunted her a few times, then happily led the dog away. Director Lee was left alone in the room in a terrible mood. This morning, the police came to see Sang-ah and Tae-seop. They questioned them about Chae-sang's murder. According to security camera footage, a woman entered the room before Chae-sang was murdered. However, the police haven't been able to identify her because the camera angle showing the killer's face was erased. Sang-ah was the one who had a conflict with Chae-sang at the cafe that afternoon, so the police contacted her for questioning. Tae-seop then remembered what Harry had said earlier. He wondered who the real killer of Chae-sang was. Was it Harry or someone else? It remains an unsolved mystery. Chae-sang held the only evidence that could expose Sang-ah in Wang Chae's case, but Chae-sang was murdered. Furthermore, Sang-ah and her husband were crying to gain sympathy, causing the online community to quickly change their attitude. They turned to criticizing the media for reporting inaccurately. Tae-seop and his wife regained public favor. Now, Tae-seop is sought after by journalists and the chairman of the Creative Party. He is like the most promising candidate in history. In contrast to her husband, although Sang-ah has been exonerated, her return to professional acting will be difficult. Sang-ah only received one film offer, but that film contained sensitive scenes revealing her body. However, Sang-ah had to agree to film it because she was no longer in a position to be picky about roles. But when Sang-ah arrived on set, she received information that the film's main investor demanded an immediate change of actress, otherwise they would withdraw their investment. Clearly, someone wanted to completely destroy Sang-ah's career. That person was Director Lee. Meanwhile, Tae-seop was actively campaigning on the streets to encourage voters to vote. He also participated in interviews. He shared his struggles to overcome poverty. Soon after, Tae-seop attracted a large number of voters. However, he still couldn't create a significant gap between himself and the other candidates. Councillor Park was his biggest rival. When Tae-seop researched his opponent, he discovered that his rival had a sponsoring backer. It turned out that despite his popularity, Tae-seop didn't have any sponsors. This was due to Director Lee's interference. She had secretly used the power of the Gaia group to pressure the business community. Both Tae-seop and his wife were extremely troubled by Director Lee's obstruction. In this difficult situation, Tae-seop came up with the idea of seeking investment from Director Lee's rival company. The company Tae-seop targeted was TG Trading Company, whose CEO was Director Lee's ex-husband. In the past, Director Lee heartlessly abandoned her poor husband to pursue the wealthy Chairman Kwon. The very next day, Tae-seop went to see Director Lee's ex-husband to solicit investment. Director Jang admitted that he was looking for someone to take revenge on Director Lee. But Director Jang wondered what made Tae-seop worthy of his investment. Tae-seop mentioned that Director Lee had blocked all his funding sources, which was enough to prove that he was a major threat to her. Furthermore, Tae-seop was just like Director Jang. They were both poor but ambitious. Very quickly, Tae-seop reached an agreement with a high-quality backer. Meanwhile, Director Lee was leisurely hiking with a fortune teller. Director Lee pointed to Congressman Sun's building in front of them. She said that she was aiming to cooperate with him. Although Congressman Sun was a wicked and immoral man, anyone who crossed him would immediately be harmed. The fortune teller continued to predict that Congressman Sun's horoscope indicated a great destiny, and his political fortune would flourish. He had a high chance of winning the presidency. Director Lee was extremely pleased. She was certain that Congressman Sun would be elected president in the next term. Meanwhile, Sang-ah was practicing boxing when she suddenly received unexpected news. The director of the film with the sensitive scenes had contacted her again. Because the film contained sensitive scenes, it seemed that all the other actors had refused, so the director contacted Sang-ah. The director even suggested that Sang-ah meet Director Lee. Sang-ah was furious. She would rather starve than beg that scheming woman. Her manager advised Sang-ah to be humble humble, explaining that the entertainment industry was like that. If Sang-ah remained silent, her career would be ruined by director Lee anyway. Manager Kim reiterated the reason he left his comfortable old company to join Sang-ah's own company. He believed she was strong enough. One day, Sang-ah could conquer both the project and her enemies. Manager Kim believed Sang-ah could reach the pinnacle of the acting world. At that time, Sang-ah would be the manager of the best actress. If Sang-ah lost this project, she might face unemployment for several more years. Even if Sang-ah was lucky enough to get a role, she would only receive a few minor supporting roles. Manager Kim's words made Sang-ah waver. Sang-ah patiently texted director Lee to invite her for a few drinks. However, Sang-ah waited outside the bar for a long time, but director Lee still didn't show up. Sang-ah didn't know that she had read the message, but she disdainfully ignored the meeting place. Instead, director Lee was at home dancing. The scene shifts to director Jang's yacht. He confides that he once truly loved director Lee, but she abandoned him for a wealthy man. Therefore, director Jang strived to become rich to get revenge on his ex-wife. He tells Tae-seop some surprising news. He once liked Sang-ah. Director Jang will invest that money in Tae-seop, on the condition that Tae-seop agrees to let director Jang spend one night with his wife. Tae-seop, enraged, attacks director Jang, but is thrown into the restroom by security. Tae-seop is now soaking wet. He slaps himself in the face to regain his composure. Afterward, Tae-seop confronts director Jang. He tells the director that he and his wife haven't been intimate since their marriage. This statement implies that Tae-seop agrees to use his wife as leverage for funding. Tae-seop laughs hysterically, grabbing a bottle of liquor and spraying it everywhere. Tae-seop was trying to curry favor with director Jang. Sang-ah couldn't wait for director Lee, so she went home. On the way home, she suddenly saw a billboard advertising the film with the sensitive scenes had found its lead actress. It was a young, new actress, and that actress was none other than Hae-ri. At this time, Officer Do, the investigator of Chae-sang's murder, suddenly announced a shift in suspicion. The suspect was changed from female to male because the fabric found on the victim's skin was oversized clothing, meant for someone taller than 1.85 meters. Furthermore, a suspicious man had appeared near the crime scene. The next day, Sang-ah went to Tae-seop's office. She asked if he also suspected Hae-ri was the murderer of Chae-sang. Tae-seop admitted he had suspicions, but he still hoped it wasn't true. He believed that once the police caught the real killer, everything would be clear. Tae-seop said that director Lee had just come to see him. Director Lee invited Tae-seop to join her side. She promised to arrange for him to join Congressman Sun's team. She would handle the matter of the money he received from director John and the troubles with the creative party herself. Tae-seop wondered why she wanted to bring in an enemy as a spy. However, director Lee didn't explain. Tae-seop then said that his post-election plan was to side with Congressman Gu. Director Lee then taunted him, saying that Congressman Gu was about to fail. Tae-seop brought up the matter of Hae-ri and the other film. He asked what director Lee was really plotting. Tae-seop warned director Lee that if she wanted revenge, she should target him, not make things difficult for his wife. Therefore, director Lee gave Tae-seop a choice. If he wanted Sang-ah to be safe, he had to work for director Lee. Sang-ah asked what choice her husband had made. Tae-seop said he was delaying his decision. He reasoned that if he refused immediately, director Lee would ruin Sang-ah's acting career. He added that until he gave his answer, he would find a way to prevent director Lee from playing tricks on Sang-ah. Sang-ah then said she would pretend to fall into the trap because she needed the film. Director Lee needed Tae-seop. Given the current situation, both she and her husband needed director Lee. Sang-ah knew this would hurt her pride, but she understood it would help her husband's election. Sang-ah decided to swallow her pride once more. That evening, Sang-ah immediately went to see director Lee. At that moment, director Lee was talking to Congressman Sun at the golf course. She wanted to recommend Tae-seop to Congressman Sun, but the negative image surrounding Tae-seop's wife worried Congressman Sun. Director Lee told Congressman Sun not to worry because she would rebuild Sang-ah's image. While Congressman Sun was still hesitating, director Lee had someone bring out a large sum of money as a bribe. Just then, Sang-ah entered, interrupting the conversation. Director Lee went to the restroom. Sang-ah followed her inside. Sang-ah asked if director Lee wanted to put Congressman Sun in the presidential position and then help her take over the Gaia group. Sang-ah demanded that director Lee return the film to her. Furthermore, director Lee had to make Sang-ah the representative model for Gaia so that Sang-ah could restore the image that director Lee herself had ruined. In return, Sang-ah promised to convince her husband to work for director Lee. Sang-ah and Tae-seop needed to have a good image for him to work for Congressman Sun. Congressman's son had just said the same thing, but Director Lee was no ordinary person. Director Lee declared that she didn't need Sang-ah. Instead, without Director Lee, Sang-ah would lose everything. After Director Lee finished speaking, she threw the golf ball straight into the toilet after using it. After some hesitation, Sang-ah decided to endure it. She reached into the toilet, retrieved the ball, and washed it clean. Director Lee was surprised that Sang-ah would humble herself to that extent, so she found it quite amusing.